Planet of the Apes is the film that delivered the greatest twist ending in cinema history. It made every filmmaker after it question what they thought they knew about endings, but even after nearly 60 years, this film is still hiding secrets. Did you know Rod Serling wrote approximately 40 drafts of this screenplay, and that every single line of dialogue in the finished film is different from what he wrote? Today we're uncovering the hidden truths about Planet of the Apes 1968, including the radically different version that two studios rejected before a single frame was ever shot.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
15. The ape city that never existed. The ape world you know is primitive. Mud huts, crude weapons, a society that feels ancient and pre-industrial, which is exactly what makes Taylor's situation feel so hopeless. But that world was never Rod Serling's vision. Serling wrote approximately 40 drafts of this screenplay, and in every one of them, the ape civilization was fully modern. Stores with ape mannequins and shop windows, guerrilla policemen directing traffic, movie marquees, flying machines, a functioning technological society that mirrored contemporary Earth almost exactly. Warner Brothers saw the budget estimate and immediately rejected the entire project. Fox only agreed to take it on after the concept was gutted. Director Franklin Schaffner brought in blacklisted screenwriter Michael Wilson, who had quietly written Lawrence of Arabia and The Bridge on the River Kwai without credit, and told him to make the apes primitive. The budget collapsed overnight. But something unexpected happened. By making the ape world unrecognizable, they accidentally protected the twist. Fact 14. Fox didn't believe the film could be made until they shot a test scene. 20th Century Fox executives were convinced that a film built around ape characters would look ridiculous on screen. No amount of script development or concept art was going to change their position. Producer Arthur P. Jacobs needed proof the premise could work visually. The solution was a $5,000 test scene, filmed on March 8, 1966, using an early draft of Rod Serling's script and preliminary versions of John Chambers' makeup. Charlton Heston played Thomas, the lead astronaut. Edward G. Robinson played Dr. Zaius. James Brolin and Linda Harrison, two unknown Fox contract players, played Cornelius and Zira. The scene was simple and brief. It worked. Fox greenlit the production on the strength of 5 minutes of footage shot for $5,000. A franchise that would eventually generate billions in revenue was approved because one test scene made executives stop laughing. Fact 13. Rod Serling was the first writer and almost made it a Twilight Zone film. The earliest scripts for Planet of the Apes were written by Rod Serling, the creator of The Twilight Zone. Serling was attracted to the premise precisely because it aligned with his instincts for social allegory and ironic revelation. His early drafts set the story in a fully developed futuristic city, an advanced ape civilization with architecture, technology, and institutional complexity. The problem was cost. Constructing a convincing futuristic city for an ape society was prohibitively expensive at any budget Fox was willing to approve. The project was briefly considered as a Twilight Zone theatrical spin-off. When Michael Wilson was brought in to rewrite, he pulled the setting back to something more primitive and far cheaper, reducing the ape civilization to a pre-industrial level that could be built on existing locations. Rod Serling received a co-screenplay credit on the finished film alongside Wilson. Virtually none of his dialogue survived. His ending did. Fact 12. Edward G. Robinson left because he wouldn't shave his beard. Edward G. Robinson was the first choice for Dr. Zaius, the film's cunning, authoritarian orangutan antagonist. Robinson was cast, appeared in the test footage, and was publicly announced. Then makeup designer John Chambers ran into a problem. Robinson refused to shave his beard. The ape transformation required a clean shave as its foundation. The prosthetics couldn't be applied over facial hair without compromising the effect entirely. Robinson attempted to commission an independent makeup artist to build a custom facial appliance that would work over his beard. Chambers shut that down immediately, telling the producer directly that Robinson had to go. Behind the scenes, producer Arthur P. Jacobs had already been considering replacing Robinson with someone cheaper. The beard dispute gave him exactly the excuse he needed. Maurice Evans was cast as Zaius. Robinson's test footage survived and appears in behind-the-scenes documentaries. His orangutan face is one of cinema's great what-ifs. Fact 11. The love interest was cast. Because she was the producer's mistress, Linda Harrison was cast as Nova, the beautiful mute human female who becomes Taylor's companion, because she was the mistress of producer Richard Zanuck. Ursula Andress had been considered for the role and turned it down. Raquel Welch had been approached and declined. Jacqueline Bisset and Edie Williams were among the other names considered. Harrison had no significant film credits and minimal acting experience. She got the part anyway. Harrison and Zanuck married in 1969 and divorced 9 years later. Her casting generated internal commentary at Fox that nobody recorded officially and everyone noticed privately. She appeared in the role again in the sequel, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, a franchise built on the premise that social hierarchy determines everything cast its most prominent female role through the most straightforward application of that principle. Fact 10. Charlton Heston had the flu, and everyone agreed it made the film better. Charlton Heston was sick with influenza for a significant portion of the Planet of the Apes shoot. The desert locations in Arizona with temperatures exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit did not help his recovery. His voice was raw, hoarse, and stripped of its natural richness throughout filming. Rather than wait for him to recover, director Franklin Schaffner and the producers made a collective decision. The hoarseness worked. Taylor, as written, was a misanthropic, world-weary astronaut who had voluntarily left humanity behind. The flu gave his voice an exhaustion and bitterness that complemented the character perfectly. The most famous line in the film, "Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape," lands with the specific force it does, partly because Heston's voice was genuinely degraded. The illness was never in the script. The performance it produced was irreplaceable. Fact 9, the makeup department had 78 artists and changed cinema forever. John Chambers brought a team of 78 makeup artists to Planet of the Apes, a number that reflected the sheer scale of what the production required. Chambers had spent weeks at the Los Angeles Zoo studying ape facial expressions and movement before designing a single appliance. His techniques traced back to work he had done during World War II, creating prosthetic facial reconstructions for severely disfigured veterans. The critical breakthrough was expressive flexibility, and previous creature makeups had locked actors into fixed expressions. Chambers engineered appliances that moved with the actors' faces, allowing genuine emotion to register through full prosthetic coverage. Audiences could read sympathy in Zira's face and contempt in Zaius's without being told what to feel. The Academy Awards had no category for makeup in 1969. They created a special honorary Oscar specifically for Chambers' achievement and presented it to him in a ceremony that deserves its own fact. Fact 8. The Oscar was handed to him by a chimpanzee. When the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences decided to honor John Chambers with an honorary Oscar for his makeup work on Planet of the Apes, they faced a ceremonial question. The standard presentation, one human handing an award to another human, felt inadequate for an occasion honoring work that had transformed humans into convincing primates. Their solution was direct. The honorary Oscar was presented to Chambers at the 41st Academy Awards by a chimpanzee in a tuxedo. It remains the only Academy Award in the history of the ceremony to have been presented by a non-human recipient. Chambers accepted the award with the composure of a man who had spent months working alongside people in ape makeup and found nothing particularly surprising about the arrangement. The first makeup artist ever honored by the Academy received his recognition from a chimpanzee. The Academy has never fully explained whether this was planned far in advance or improvised at the last moment. Fact 7. The ape actors segregated themselves by species. During production, something unexpected happened among the cast members playing apes. The actors portraying chimpanzees, Roddy McDowall, Kim Hunter, began gravitating toward each other during breaks, lunches, and downtime on set. The actors playing gorillas grouped separately. The orangutans kept to their own cluster. The self-segregation was entirely spontaneous and entirely consistent. Nobody had organized it, no director had suggested it, and no production note had encouraged it. The hours spent in makeup, the specific postures and movements each group had developed for their species, and the social dynamics built into the script had apparently translated into real behavioral patterns off camera. A film exploring what happens when social hierarchy is used to justify dehumanization was being made by a cast that had organically reproduced that hierarchy. In the catering area, nobody found it funny at the time. Fact 6. Jerry Goldsmith conducted the score. Wearing a gorilla mask, Jerry Goldsmith's score for Planet of the Apes is one of the most genuinely avant-garde pieces of music ever written for a Hollywood film. He used stainless steel mixing bowls, a ram's horn, unusual percussion instruments, and a deliberately primitive orchestral vocabulary to create something that sounded like nothing audiences had heard before. The score begins and ends in silence, an unusual structural choice that Goldsmith defended as the film's own argument. During the recording sessions, Goldsmith conducted the orchestra wearing a gorilla mask. Whether this was a sustained creative exercise or an extended joke that the orchestra played along with is not fully documented. What is documented is the result: an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Score, a placement on AFI's list of greatest film scores, and a piece of music that defined how science fiction could sound in ways that are still audible 50 years later. Fact 5. The final scene was filmed in a location only accessible by helicopter. The ending of Planet of the Apes, Taylor on horseback discovering the ruined Statue of Liberty half buried in sand, collapsing to his knees as the full horror of the Revelation lands, was filmed on a remote stretch of beach between Malibu and Oxnard, California. The location was so isolated and physically inaccessible that neither cast nor crew could reach it by conventional means. The entire company, actors, director, camera operators, equipment, was flown in by helicopter and lowered down to the beach. The Statue of Liberty prop itself had to be constructed on-site under the same conditions. One of cinema's most celebrated final images was filmed in a location where no vehicle could reach it, no road led to it, and no one could leave without a helicopter. The logistics of the most famous twist ending in science fiction history required the production equivalent of a military operation. Fact 4. 3 endings were written. Heston chose. This one Planet of the Apes had 3 different possible endings developed during production. The details of the unchosen versions have not been fully documented publicly, but the surviving accounts confirm that the Statue of Liberty ending, half buried in sand, Taylor on his knees, the full weight of the revelation hitting in a single image, was specifically championed by Charlton Heston. The ending that made it to screen was the one Heston preferred above the alternatives, given that the twist had been conceived by Rod Serling as the film's irreducible moral gut punch, and that the production had spent considerable money and ingenuity constructing a half-buried landmark on an inaccessible beach. It is worth noting that the most famous ending in the franchise's history survived, not only because it was the best idea, but because the film's star went to bat for it specifically. Without Heston insisting one of cinema's most celebrated final images might have been the second choice. Fact 3. The film is rated G and contains nudity. Planet of the Apes received a G rating from the MPAA, the classification intended to indicate content suitable for all audiences, including young children. It is one of only 2 G-rated films in cinema history to contain nudity. The other is The Bible in the Beginning, released in 1966. The nudity in Planet of the Apes is brief and contextual. Human primitives in the film's world wear minimal animal skin clothing, but it is present, verified, and entirely consistent with the film's classification as something the entire family could watch together on a Saturday afternoon. The MPAA's 1968 rating standards operated differently than the system audiences know today. The rating that Planet of the Apes received would be impossible under current guidelines. A film with Charlton Heston's horse misanthropy, references to nuclear war, and the complete collapse of human civilization was certified suitable for all ages. Fact 2. The makeup techniques came from reconstructing veterans' faces. John Chambers developed the foundational techniques he used on Planet of the Apes during World War II when he worked as a surgical technician, creating prosthetic facial reconstructions for veterans who had suffered severe disfigurement in combat. The challenge in both contexts was the same: building a new face over damaged or absent features that looked natural, moved convincingly, and allowed the person wearing it to express genuine emotion. Chambers had spent years making broken human faces functional before he spent years making human faces into apes. The expressive flexibility that made Zira sympathetic and Zaius menacing, the quality that separated Planet of the Apes from every previous creature film, was an engineering solution developed in military hospitals and applied decades later to a science fiction production. The breakthrough that changed makeup effects forever began with the faces of wounded soldiers that nobody outside the hospital ever saw. Fact 1. The film was originally considered a Twilight Zone spin-off, and the ending proves it. Rod Serling was the Twilight Zone. He had spent 5 seasons building a body of work defined by a single structural principle, ordinary people discovering that the world they thought they understood is something else entirely, revealed in a final image that recontextualizes everything that came before. When he wrote the original Planet of the Apes scripts, the project was briefly considered as a Twilight Zone theatrical film rather than a standalone feature. The Statue of Liberty ending, Taylor's devastating recognition that he never left Earth at all, Chaos, is a Twilight Zone ending. The structure, the irony, the moral weight compressed into a single visual revelation are the specific tools Serling had spent 5 years perfecting on television. He brought them intact to a feature film, the studio that eventually made the film without his involvement kept the ending he had designed. It remains the finest piece of Twilight Zone storytelling that never aired on the Twilight Zone. And there you have it. 14 weird facts about Planet of the Apes. A film approved because of a $5,000 test scene built on a makeup budget larger than most productions, acted partly while its star had the flu, and closed by an ending that a television writer had been perfecting his entire career. Which fact hit hardest? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for more deep dives into the classics that changed what science fiction was allowed to be. Until next time.